California has some of the most desirable places to live in the entire country. The coastline, the weather, the opportunity, well, it's real, and I don't want to take that away from you. But California also has some of the worst traps in American real estate. And the traps are the dangerous ones because they don't look like traps on the way in. You're scrolling Zillow at midnight, you see a price that actually makes sense, like for California, at least. You think you found the deal. A little rough around the edges, maybe, but that's fine. You can handle rough around the edges. Then you move there. You start noticing things. The neighborhood doesn't match what the listing photos suggested. The commute is longer than you calculated. The services aren't what you expected. And the price that seemed like a bargain starts to make a different kind of sense. By then, your lease is signed and your stuff is already there. We're not doing the obvious video here. Bakersfield has been on every list since 2019. We're going deeper. Real data, real problems, the specific numbers the city's tourism page will never show you. Here's the thing about this moment in California. The state lost 308,000 net residents between 2020 and 2024, according to the California Department of Finance. That's not a political statement. That's 308,000 households that ran the numbers and decided the math didn't work anymore. Some of them made smart moves, some of them made lateral moves, jumping from one bad situation straight into another one. And the last city on this list, it's maybe the most important one on here because it shows you exactly where this whole cycle ends up when nobody stops it. Number 10, Stockton sits in San Joaquin County, right along Highway 99 and Interstate 5, about 80 miles east of San Francisco and 50 miles south of Sacramento. The population is approximately 322,000, making it one of the larger cities in the Central Valley. On paper, Stockton looks like the answer to the Bay Area affordability crisis. You can find single family homes in the 35,000. Genuinely, that's less than half the median in San Jose. You're within commuting distance of Sacramento and theoretically reachable from the Bay. There's a university, a waterfront revitalization project, and a downtown that's been getting incremental investment for a decade. That pitch is exactly what draws people in. Then you move there. The violent crime rate in Stockton is 1193 per 1,000 residents. That is 201% above the national average. Property crime sits at 47.3 per thousand. Median household income is 504,208 ton, more than $28,000 below the state median. The unemployment rate runs persistently above state averages. Air quality in the San Joaquin Valley is some of the worst in the United States. Stockton regularly records unhealthy air quality days from June through October. On a hot summer afternoon in central Stockton, you will see businesses with iron roll-down gates, even the ones that are open. That's not decoration. That's a neighborhood telling you something about itself. There are people who live in Stockton and have built good lives there. The waterfront has real improvements. If you work remotely and are extremely deliberate about which neighborhood you choose, the math can work. But if you're moving there thinking the Bay Area energy is going to seep eastward and transform the city before you need it to, you're betting on a timeline that has been pushed back every year for 2 decades. Cheap housing in a city with 21% above average violent crime, persistent unemployment, and hazardous air quality isn't a gateway to California living. That's a trade you might regret. Number 9. Antioch is in Contra Costa County, right on State Route 4 and Highway 160, about 45 miles northeast of San Francisco. Population is approximately 116,000, and the pitch for Antioch is genuinely compelling. You're in the Bay Area. Not adjacent to the Bay Area, actually in it, inside Contra Costa County. The Delta Waterway is right there. Housing prices are a fraction of what you'd pay in Oakland or Walnut Creek. For a family that has been priced out of everything west of the Caldecott Tunnel, Antioch looks like a legitimate foothold in the region. Living here is a different story. The violent crime rate in Antioch is 862 per 1,000 Simosin people. That is 118% above the national average. Property crime runs at 52.7 incidents per thousand. The median household income is $79341, which sounds reasonable until you factor in that Bay Area cost of living still applies here: the groceries, the gas, the insurance. The BART extension to Antioch opened in 2018, but the line is slow. The parking situation at the station is a persistent problem, and during rush hour, you're looking at over 90 minutes to reach downtown San Francisco. Most people end up driving, and the Highway 4 corridor during commute hours is one of the most congested corridors in the entire region. There are streets in Antioch where you will notice every third house has a security camera system on the garage. Not because the neighborhood is particularly paranoid, because the property crime rate justifies it. There are good pockets of Antioch. The newer developments near the waterfront have attracted families who are genuinely happy there. And if you buy in the right neighborhood and accept the commute math honestly, you can make it work. But moving here because it's in the Bay Area and expecting Bay Area quality of life is one of the most common relocation mistakes I see people make. Bay Area zip code. That does not mean Bay Area living. The numbers make that clear. Number 8. Fresno is the county seat of Fresno County, right on Highway 99, about 185 miles south of Sacramento and 220 miles north of Los Angeles. Population is approximately 545,000, the fifth largest city in California. Fresno has a pitch that actually holds up in some ways. It's affordable, it's centrally located, it has a full urban infrastructure like a state university, a major hospital system, a downtown that has seen real investment. The drive to Yosemite is under 2 hours. If you work in agriculture, healthcare, or government, there are legitimate career paths here. That's not a fabrication. Then you move there. The violent crime rate is 944 per 1,000 residents. That is 138% above the national average. Property crime sits at 54.1 per thousand. Median household income is 4,011, nearly $29,000 below the state median. The poverty rate is 26.4%, one of the highest for any large California city. Air quality is its own chapter. Fresno sits in the San Joaquin Valley Air Basin and has been ranked among the most polluted cities in the United States by the American Lung Association for multiple consecutive years. Asthma rates in the city are significantly elevated above national norms. In July and August, stepping outside in Fresno at 2 in the afternoon feels like opening an oven. The heat is not abstract, it is physical and oppressive, and it lasts for months. Before I write off Fresno entirely, there are neighborhoods in North Fresno, Tower District, Fig Garden, Woodward Park, that have genuinely good quality of life. If you're a healthcare professional, an educator, or someone with roots already there, the affordability can make real sense. But if you're arriving from outside without a specific anchor here, the size of the city creates an expectation of urban amenity that the poverty rate and crime statistics undermine every day. Fresno is not a hidden gem. It's a large city with a large city's problems at a price point that reflects those problems honestly. That's not a deal. That's the market pricing and the reality. Number 7. Clearlake is in Lake County, right along Highway 53 and State Route 20, about 115 miles north of San Francisco and 40 miles east of Ukiah. Population is approximately 15,000. The appeal is real and specific. Lake County is one of the cheapest places in the entire state of California to buy a home. You can find properties in the 15,000 here. It's Northern California, so there's natural beauty. Clear Lake itself is the largest natural freshwater lake entirely within California's borders. Wine country isn't far. If you're a remote worker who needs affordable space and doesn't require proximity to a metro, that case on paper actually makes sense. The reality is more complicated. Clear Lake's violent crime rate is 2,166 per 100,000 people. That is 447% above the national average. Not a typo, 447%. Property crime runs at 71.2 per thousand. The unemployment rate in Lake County consistently runs above 10%, making it one of the highest in the state. Median household income in Clear Lake is around $32,000. The poverty rate is over 35%. Methamphetamine has been a persistent and documented crisis in this community for years. The Clear Lake Police Department has been chronically understaffed relative to the calls they receive. There are parts of Clear Lake where you can see water hyacinth, an invasive species, covering entire coves of the shoreline, beautiful on its face. The lake has been under repeated harmful algal bloom advisories from the California Department of Public Health, making it unsafe to swim in during large portions of the year. There are people who have lived in Lake County their whole lives and have deep community ties here. I'm not dismissing that. If you own land, if you're self-sufficient, if you have a specific reason to be in this corner of Northern California, it can be home. But if you're moving here from a city, seduced by the $155,000 listing without a clear economic plan, the price was low for a reason, and by the time you realize it, it's too late. 447% above the national average violent crime rate. That number doesn't negotiate. Number 6. San Bernardino is in San Bernardino County, which is also the largest county by land area in the contiguous United States, right on Interstate 10 and Highway 215, about 65 miles east of Los Angeles. Population is approximately 222,000. Here's the honest case for San Bernardino. It's genuinely close to LA. It sits at the base of the San Bernardino Mountains with Big Bear Lake a short drive north, and the housing prices are dramatically lower than the west side. California State University, San Bernardino is here. There's an Amtrak connection. For someone who needs to be in the Inland Empire corridor and is working with a tight budget, the geographic logic is real. That pitch is exactly what draws people in. Then you move there. The violent crime rate in San Bernardino is 1327 per 100,000 residents. That is 236% above the national average. Property crime sits at 59.4 per thousand. Median household income is $468.42, nearly $35,000 below the state median. San Bernardino filed for Chapter 9 municipal bankruptcy in 2012 and only exited bankruptcy in 2017. The city is still rebuilding services that were cut during those years. School performance metrics across San Bernardino Unified are among the lowest in the state. The air quality in the Inland Empire, driven by freeway traffic and warehouse logistics operations, routinely earns the worst ozone ratings in California. But here's the part most people don't find out until after they sign the lease. The city's fiscal recovery is real on paper, but fragile in practice. The police department is still understaffed relative to the crime rate. Code enforcement is inconsistent. Large stretches of the city look exactly like a municipality that went bankrupt a decade ago and hasn't fully rebuilt. There are people who are invested in San Bernardino's future, and there are specific neighborhoods that function well. The proximity to the mountains is a genuine quality of life asset for the right person. But moving here because the prices are low relative to LA without understanding what's underneath those prices is how people end up locked into a situation they didn't fully research. 236% above average violent crime in a city still recovering from municipal bankruptcy. That's not a bargain. That's a trap. Number 5. Victorville is in San Bernardino County, right along Interstate 15 at the edge of the Mojave Desert, about 85 miles northeast of Los Angeles. Population is approximately 134,000. Victorville is positioned as the affordable alternative to the LA Metro for families and working class buyers who've been priced out. And on pure price per square foot math, it is genuinely cheaper. The I-15 corridor connects it to San Bernardino and theoretically to LA. There are newer housing developments, some decent retail infrastructure, and for people who don't want to go further into the desert, it feels like the last outpost of relative affordability within reach of Southern California opportunity. That case is real. The data tells a different story. The violent crime rate in Victorville is 894 per 100,000 people. That is 126% above the national average. Property crime runs at 48.3 incidents per thousand. Median household income is $5,726. The commute reality is what breaks most people. Driving from Victorville to the San Fernando Valley during rush hour on the I-15 is routinely 2 to 2.5 hours each direction. That's 4 to 5 hours of your day. The high desert heat mirrors everything I described in the previous cities. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 105 degrees, and the wind in the Victor Valley creates dust conditions that are hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced them. The wind here doesn't stop. On bad days, it pushes tumbleweeds across the freeway. Victorville works for a specific type of person: remote workers who rarely need to be in LA, retirees on fixed incomes who prioritize square footage and can tolerate the climate, or people who work locally within the high desert economy. If that's you, the affordability is genuine. But if you're planning to commute to Los Angeles or the San Gabriel Valley 5 days a week and thinking Victorville solves your housing problem, you're not solving the problem. You're relocating it to your windshield. That's not a bargain. That's a trade you might regret. You know what else deserves your attention? That subscribe button. I put out California content every single week. Real data, not clickbait. Anyway, let's keep going. Number 4, Pittsburgh sits in Contra Costa County, right along Highway 4 on the eastern edge of the Bay Area, about 40 miles northeast of San Francisco. Population is approximately 75,000. I need to be upfront here. Pittsburgh appears on Bay Area affordability lists all the time, including content I've seen praised in relocation communities. The case isn't wrong on its face. The BART connection is real. The Delta waterfront has genuine character. Housing prices are dramatically lower than almost anything else inside Contra Costa County. For a first-time buyer trying to get into the Bay Area market, that combination looks like a lifeline. That pitch is exactly what draws people in. Living here is a different story. The violent crime rate in Pittsburgh is 1014 per 100,000 residents. That is 156% above the national average. Property crime sits at 44.7 per thousand. Median household income is $77,381. Sounds reasonable until you factor in that Bay Area costs still apply and that Pittsburgh's employment base can't support most Bay Area careers without a significant commute. The BART ride to San Francisco from Pittsburgh Bay Point Station takes over an hour, and the station parking situation is a recurring problem that BART has never fully solved. Before the industrial era wound down, Pittsburgh was actually a legitimate industrial city with its own economic engine. The steel mills and chemical plants that defined it for decades are gone, and what moved in hasn't filled that gap at the scale the city needs. Some people in Pittsburgh love it. The Delta waterfront on a clear day is genuinely beautiful, and the community has real character. If you work locally in the East Bay or can tolerate the BART commute and you buy in one of the better neighborhoods, it can work. But the 156% above average violent crime rate shapes everything: the schools, the insurance rates, the quality of local retail, and what your neighbors are dealing with. That's not hidden information. That's what the numbers say. Number 3, Modesto is in Stanislaus County, right along Highway 99, about 90 miles east of San Francisco and 65 miles south of Sacramento. Population is approximately 218,000. The case for Modesto isn't hard to make. Central Valley location, relatively affordable housing with medians in the low 4,000 thousands, close enough to the Bay to commute for certain jobs, and a city that has actual infrastructure, a downtown, a university center, established healthcare. In the 1970s and 1980s, Modesto was a thriving agricultural city with real economic momentum. American graffiti was set here. George Lucas grew up here. That heritage is real. The reality is more complicated. The violent crime rate in Modesto is 893 per 1,000 people. That is 126% above the national average. Property crime runs at 56.4 per thousand. That's a rate that ranks consistently among the worst in the state. Median household income is 570,300 lines, more than $25,000 below the state median. The commute to the Bay Area from Modesto is not a casual commute. The Altamont Pass on Interstate 580 during peak hours turns a theoretical 90-minute drive into a 2-hour plus grind, and there's no realistic transit alternative that makes Bay Area work viable from here at scale. Some people describe Modesto as a place where time feels like it stopped, and not in a charming way. The downtown has had genuine investment, but the surrounding commercial corridors still show the effects of decades of disinvestment. The agricultural roots are everywhere, but the economy that used to support those roots has shifted in ways that haven't translated into broad prosperity for the city's residents. There are people who grew up in Modesto and love it with real affection. The weather is better than Fresno. The community has character. If you have family there or a specific job opportunity, the cost of living arithmetic can genuinely work. But if you're relocating based on Zillow prices and assuming the Bay Area energy will eventually reach Modesto, that's been the working assumption for 30 years, and the numbers are still the numbers. 126% above national average violent crime, 56 property crime incidents per thousand. That's not a hidden cost. That's the price disclosed up front if you look. Number 2, Barstow is in San Bernardino County, right on the intersection of Interstate 15 and Interstate 40, at the edge of the Mojave Desert, about 150 miles northeast of Los Angeles. Population is approximately 24,000. Barstow gets overlooked on these lists because it's small, but that's exactly why I'm including it here, because the people who end up in Barstow are usually the people who couldn't afford anywhere else and didn't think through what affordable actually means in a place like this. On paper, Barstow has homes in the 15,000 acres, a location on 2 major interstate highways, and a history as a genuine crossroads. Route 66 came through here, the railroad has always been here, and Fort Irwin to the north still employs a meaningful number of military families. That pitch is what draws people in. Then you move there. The violent crime rate in Barstow is 1089 per 1,000 dozen people. That is 175% above the national average. Property crime sits at 58.1 per thousand. Median household income is 4,127, more than $42,000 below the California state median. The nearest full-service hospital for specialty care is in San Bernardino, nearly 75 miles away. Summer temperatures in Barstow regularly hit 110 degrees, and the city sits in a wind corridor that makes that heat feel even more aggressive. The nearest city of any real size, Victorville, is 35 miles away, and I already covered Victorville. The economic anchor in Barstow has always been the railroad and highway traffic. Amazon opened a fulfillment center nearby, which created some jobs. But outside of those sectors, the employment base is thin in a way that compounds every other problem in the city. This is the part most people don't find out until after they sign the lease. Barstow doesn't have a bad reputation the way Compton or Stockton do. It just has nothing. The crime rate is alarming, the isolation is total, and the heat is relentless. There's no rebranding campaign, no university hype cycle, no next up and coming narrative. It's a highway town that peaked during the Route 66 era and never found a new identity after that era ended. Affordability without livability isn't a deal. In Barstow, it's just affordability. And when you look at what the $15,000 is buying you, the numbers start to make a different kind of sense. And at number one, the city that I think is the single worst trap in California right now for anyone who doesn't do serious research first. Vallejo is in Solano County, right on Interstate 80 on the northeastern shore of San Pablo Bay, about 30 miles northeast of San Francisco. Population is approximately 121,000, and everything about Vallejo's pitch is designed to work on someone who has been priced out of the Bay Area. You're technically in the Bay Area. The ferry to San Francisco exists. You can find homes in the 4,000s, sometimes lower, which by Bay Area standards sounds almost impossible. The waterfront has been in various stages of development for years. There are neighborhoods with genuine Victorian architecture. On a clear day, the views across the bay are legitimately beautiful. For someone who has been grinding in San Francisco or Oakland and feels like they're always one rent increase away from leaving the region entirely, Vallejo looks like the answer. It is not the answer. Vallejo filed for municipal bankruptcy in 2008, one of the first major California cities to do so. What that bankruptcy actually meant, the police department lost nearly a third of its officers, fire stations reduced staffing, parks maintenance fell behind, code enforcement lost resources, infrastructure maintenance was deferred year after year. Some of those cuts were restored. Many of their effects are still visible today, 17 years later. The violent crime rate in Vallejo is 966 per 1,000 people. That is 144% above the national average. That's not 20% above, it's 144% above. Aggravated assault and robbery are the most frequent violent crimes. Property crime, including motor vehicle theft, burglary, and larceny, runs significantly above state averages. The Vallejo Police Department has been under sustained scrutiny for years over use of force incidents and officer involved shootings. Independent investigations found patterns of conduct that the department has struggled to address. For a city already dealing with elevated crime, having a police department that the community doesn't trust makes every other problem harder to solve. The commute math doesn't close. The ferry exists, but factor in the drive to the terminal, the ferry fare, and transit on the San Francisco side, and you're spending $400 to $600 a month just on transportation. Most people end up driving. Driving from Vallejo to San Francisco or Oakland during rush hour is reliably 90 minutes or more. The housing savings that made Vallejo look like a bargain start evaporating when you account for commute costs, time, and the quality of life trade-offs. There are people in Vallejo who believe in the city's future, and I respect that. The waterfront potential is real. There are artists and small businesses putting genuine effort into the downtown. But a bankrupt city that has been on the verge of turning around since 2010 has been making that promise for 15 years without delivering it broadly. Moving to Vallejo because you believe in the hype of what it might become rather than understanding what it actually is right now is exactly how people end up stuck. That's not a bargain, that is a trap. And it is the number one place in California where the gap between what a city looks like from a listing and what it actually delivers to the people who live there is the widest on this entire list. 10 cities. Some are dangerous in ways the statistics make obvious. Some are overrated. They carry a price premium that their actual livability doesn't support. And some are simply places that have been promising to become something better for so long that the promise itself has become part of the pitch. California is not dying. Parts of it are genuinely being reborn. There are incredible places to live in this state, and if you do the work, you can find them. These cities just aren't them, at least not right now. If any of these places are on your list, here's what I'd actually tell you to do. Drive through at night, not just during an open house on a Sunday afternoon. Pull the crime data from the FBI's Crime Data Explorer before you check the listing price. Talk to someone who has lived there for 3 years, not someone who just moved in 6 months ago. The person who's been there 3 years knows what they wish they had researched first. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this list, or if you think I got one wrong. I'm always open to being challenged on this. That's how the list gets better.